is creativity? How could we understand it?
It begins with the word create. Put something in the world that wasn't already there. We are creative beings by our very nature. Creativity becomes the only genuine answer. We have to, as if, create a new world. That takes me back to creation myths, the idea of the hero's journey.
Perhaps those jobs won't exist very soon.
We are literally living on the edge of not knowing. No one knows the future anymore. The spirit that's already there. The language of myth, which is the language of imagination and creativity.
The hard thing is to manifest the idea.
Creativity involves the essence of the person, their spirit and their soul.
We start to think lesser of ourselves.
You pay attention to really creative people. The cave can be imagined as in the heart, and it moves through people. You actually feel it through your body. And
this is where most people kind of give up.
Perfection is never the aim. That the uniqueness is the source of the authenticity and the creativity. When it's perfect, it's over. It's done. It's, in a sense, dead.
I don't need to even know, is something going right or wrong?
Lost the confiding within themselves. You have to have enough ego to try, and then enough humility to surrender.
You're just in that, you become that.
Literally means a lack of healing. Everyone turned against each other. No matter what the subject matter is, you throw it out there, it gets polarized. The further a person gets on the way, the more they're able to see how the other ways are similar. They've lost the deeper connection to their own gift.
The aspect of spirituality,
which means the thread of life, of the way to the way, the lighting of a fire in the heart of each student. We need rituals, and so each person has a unique voice. The world that we thought we had is already gone. Creativity as being at the heart of humanity. Each human is a story. I know some people are trying to get it back, but that's not going to work. It's gone.
Welcome to the Creativity Dialogues podcast. I'm your host, Chandana Dixit. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking with Michael Meade, a mythologist, storyteller, and scholar of depth psychology and anthropology. For decades, he's been bringing ancient myths to life as a way to help us understand the crisis of our modern world. Through his teaching, his performances, and the work of his Mosaic Multicultural Foundation, Michael has inspired countless people to connect with story, imagination, and the soul's creative fire. His work explores timeless themes, destiny, genius, initiation, and the journey of finding meaning in the midst of chaos. At the heart of it all, in his deep belief that each one of us carries an inner myth, a story that's trying to be lived, and that creativity is one of the ways the soul reveals that story. Michael Meade, welcome to the Creativity Dialogues.
According to you, what is creativity? How could we understand it?
So, clearly, it begins with the word create, which means to put something in the world that wasn't already there. So every act of creativity puts something in the world that up until that point wasn't in the world. So creativity is adding to the ongoing creation of the world. It's a very big, very deep idea that often has been reduced to being seen as, an aspect, a casual aspect of humanity, or a capacity some people have and other people don't. It's essential. We are creative beings by our very nature. Every time a person speaks, they're actually putting things into the world in terms of words which have waves of sound, which move things in the ears of the listeners. We're constantly creating things just by being ourselves. But since we're in this time of great, seemingly impossible problems, creativity becomes the only genuine answer. In other words, we have to, as if, create a new world that doesn't have the problems that are threatening the current world. And so for me, that takes me back to creation myths. So this is roundabout, but in the Western world, in my experience, as long as I've been around, there's only been one myth that has become known commonly, and that's the hero's myth, the idea of the hero's journey.
Hmm.
And it became popular because of Joseph Campbell,
Yeah.
an American mythologist, who said it was the monomyth. It was the only myth. It was the meta myth from which all stories come. And even the first time I read that when I was pretty young, I thought, oh no, you're wrong. That's a wrong idea. Myth, by its nature, is multiple. There cannot be one story, just as humans cannot have one story. Each human is a story trying to unfold into the world. And so, amongst the many kinds of myth that are not heroes myths are creation myths. We are now back in creation times. The myths that are most informative right now, I think, are creation myths, which aren't there to explain how something got into the world. It's there to explain how the world is constantly remaking itself. And here we are at the end of an era in the Western world. The world that we thought we had is already gone. I know some people are trying to get it back, but that's
Yeah.
not going to work.
Yeah.
It's gone.
It's gone.
And we are in the in between, or the liminal space between the world that has gone, but not yet with the world that's coming.
Yeah.
And that means we're in a strange way, the position of creation. Creation myths from around the world almost always begin in eternal darkness. And so, and the name of eternal darkness is chaos. So that is to say, when we find ourselves in chaos, which is happening all around the world in nature and in culture, we are closer to creation than otherwise if we would only realize that we are by our own nature creative beings. And then it gets down to, I think, the essential idea. That is to say, each person is creative in their own way. Each person has, by virtue of being born, some genius qualities. And if more people would awaken to their genius qualities, which are characteristic of being creative, then we can begin to kind of recreate the world, because the world that we knew is really already gone. So
Yeah.
I see creativity as being at the heart of humanity.
Yeah.
And there's an old idea that says our hearts are hives like beehives, and honey is being made there, and sweet things and new things are coming from there. We have to get to the heart of our creativity in order to deal with what seems like impossible problems.
Yeah. That's so beautifully put. I mean, just the way that you sort of simplified everything for us to understand that there is a world, a known place which we have moved from, and we haven't completely moved to the new space. And so this current really difficult time is also the time where we all need to very, very deliberately tune into our creativity. And I think that really creativity is the only aspect that can actually save us, because people are feeling so threatened that the jobs which they have now, they perhaps those jobs won't exist very soon. The kids who are in colleges at this point, they're really worried that by the time we graduate, you know, there might not be any jobs waiting for them. And the only thing that can perhaps help them out of this is for them to take responsibility of figuring out other alternate ways, and which might actually not be a bad thing at all, because in the end, it would change you from being a mere worker for somebody to become somebody who actually has developed something new, something unique for themselves. And that's the ability that tuning into your creativity gives you. So from here, I was wondering that what do you think are the most basic aspects of creativity? If we all seek to find our creativity, I think you started uh, you gave away a little bit of it through the idea of myth and mythology. So I think that you're taking us to the point of the importance of storytelling, since myth is connected with that. So I was wondering that for all the people who kind of are going to be curious and interested on the topic of creativity, and they even like the idea of storytelling, but they don't quite know how that concept relates to them personally or to their lives. So, if you could help us understand how storytelling is actually a very, very personalized way of looking at oneself. And we are doing it all the time, but we don't quite knowingly do it. We just have these assumptions about ourselves.
Well, I think it starts with the idea that becoming oneself is job one. I know there's concern about careers. And in colleges now, many students are taking two major subjects, not just one, because no one knows. We're living in the uncertainty. We are literally living on the edge of not knowing. No one knows the future anymore. I mean, they never did, but they used to pretend they did. And now you can't even pretend because it's changing so fast and in ways that we cannot calculate, and we have to respond. So the word respond is connected to spontaneity. Reacting is not responding. Responding is being present in the moment and being capable of spontaneity. So when we talk about the elements of creativity, spontaneity is one of them. The thing that's trying to happen is brand new. And so it comes with a sense of spontaneity. And so that is the way where it connects to story is the old idea is each person is a unique story trying to unfold from within them into the world. So I'm going with the old idea that the things that are most important are inside of us. We have them. The thing that we want to know is a knowledge in us. The medicine that we need is a healing in us. We may have to go out into the world in order to encounter this knowledge in ourselves, but I'm going with the Eastern idea from Eastern philosophy that what we're looking for is inside. The Western world has not yet realized that. I shouldn't say that. The modern Western world has not realized it. The ancient Western world knew that.
Yeah.
Know thyself is one of the oldest dictums in,
Yeah.
in, in, in Western culture.
Yeah.
And so part of what we're supposed to know is how we are. I use the word genius, which is a Latin word, but it's a very well known word. Most people think it means high IQ or specific talent, but it literally means the spirit that's already there. So each person has a genius, a spirit that's already there. And it's that spirit genius quality that is creative. And so then when you go back to the idea of young people entering the world, and in the Western world now, the definition is that you have to pick a career. The old idea was that you had to get a vocation, and a vocation is something that picks you. That is to say,
Yeah.
there's something in us that is trying to be called into consciousness. And that I call that the genius. The Greeks called it the daimon. There's many names for it, but that it is the part of us that is unique, that is at the center of the story trying to unfold, and is the source of our creativity. And so I give this little example of how it's trying to happen. So when I was 13 years old, I grew up in a poor family. And by the time I was 13, I had learned not to ask for what I wanted because I never got it, but also because they couldn't give it to me, everybody became depressed. So when my mother said, "What do you want for your birthday?" I said, "I don't want anything," because I didn't want to go through that again. But my aunt said to me, "What are you interested in?" And I said, "History," Because at the time I was interested in history, I was trying to understand what happened that made my neighborhood so depressed and made the adults that I knew as if they had lost a dream or something. And I thought history would be the answer. So my aunt went to a bookstore. She was very short. And she asked, could I have a history book? And they pointed to a shelf. She reached up and grabbed the book. They wrapped it. She brought it home. She gave it to me. I get the book and I tear the paper off and I see a guy on a flying horse shooting an arrow into the sky. And I'm going, wow, I want this book. She sees it and she says, it's the wrong book. It's not a history book. She's trying to pull it back. I'm trying to pull it from her. It's the right, wrong book. When I get the rest of the paper off, it says Mythology by Edith Hamilton. She was giving me the book of the language of my life by mistake, but it wasn't a mistake. And so right there at 13 years old, I had opened a book that showed me the language of the soul. It showed me the language that I was going to eventually learn how to live with, the language of myth, which is the language of imagination and creativity. And so there it was at 13, like the right, wrong thing, like it's trying to get to us. It took me 20 years to figure out how to really live with it,
You know,
but I had it at,
this is such an incredible story. I got goosebumps because I feel that, we always complain that we need to go do things, you know, be very intentional, but we're just not responding to things that actually happen to us. Whatever
yeah,
you really desire is seeking you as well, and
yeah,
it's trying to find you too. And
yeah,
this is this is so beautiful. It
yeah.
almost tells me that you had so much of you seemed way mature for your age, I would say, at that time. uh,
I was more precocious than mature.
but you liked history, which is not what you would sort of connect these
Oh
two
yeah,
ideas with. So
no, that's true. I was a little bit older in some ways,
yeah.
and also I really value my aunt because she listened to me.
Mm,
And often it's someone that isn't the parent that
yeah.
sees or hears or recognizes
Yes.
something in the child
Yes.
that is essential. And so even though I was off, she was listening enough to go to the store. It was the first time anyone in the family had ever gone to a bookstore. And so then what would you call it? Fate or destiny or both intervened so that she picked the right, wrong book. And then, and so it's just a beautiful kind of description of how it can come to us in surprising ways and at surprising times. Because I had that information at 13, but there was no one to confirm it.
Mhm.
When I told my aunt how important the book was, she didn't understand. She was still thinking she had made a mistake. And years later, I mentioned it to her and she had forgotten about it. When I told my mother and father, they thought I was getting weirder than usual. When I told the teachers in school, they thought I was trying to cause trouble. And I eventually just stopped telling people about it. But I kept reading those stories. And
Because you
so
were
I mentioned
hooked. You were hooked onto it by
that
then. Yeah.
that night I read almost the entire book and I had found a language that I didn't have to grow up to qualify for. I didn't even have to go to school to qualify for. I qualified because I had an open mind and I had imagination. So I had said spontaneity is part of creativity. Imagination is an essential aspect of creativity.
Yeah.
Before something can be created, it has to be imagined.
Yes.
And so, AI, artificial intelligence, is almost like an antidote to natural imagination. That's the fear, is that people will lose their imagination.
Mm.
It isn't that AI can copy paintings, for instance. That's one of the things. It can change paintings in clever ways, but it also can erase the need for each person to awaken to the shape and the quality and the aim of their own imagination. In order to have a better world, we have to be able to imagine a better world. And in order to help it happen, to have agency, another part of creativity, we have to imagine ourselves already being able to contribute to a renewal of the world.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, creativity is the only medicine for the illness of the collapse of the world.
Yes. And I think that what you said about parenting, that, it's just so hard for parents to actually listen because they're programmed to keep telling, to keep instructing. And so I think that this is a huge message to all parents that listening is really, if we want to to allow the kids to hold on to their creativity, is listening to what they're saying, what they seek. And it's never even that they don't seek with complete clarity. Like when you spoke, you were able to just articulate that you were interested in history. But some accidental events allowed you to actually reach the deeper seeking. And that happened because somebody listened. So there was some place for some organic and clear things to happen. And there was also a little room for some magic to happen kind of by itself. And and this
Yeah.
is the kind of dance that has to happen if creativity has to happen.
So creativity involves the essence of the person, their spirit and their soul, but that's not all of it. So, for instance, a number of years ago, I was at an event and there was a panel on creativity. And on the panel, there were 8 or 9, I forget, speakers. And each speaker was someone who had an art, a filmmaker, a painter, a composer, all these different things. And when I looked, I quickly realized I was the oldest one. And I said, I would like to go last. And so the others went first, and they each talked about, very commonly speaking, about my paintings and my films, and all the way down the line. And I was waiting for someone to say something except my. And then because I knew they would do that. When it got to me, I said, I just want to say this. When someone is being creative, the inspiration is coming from outside themselves. The inspiration is coming from what you used to call the other world. Or in the case of music, it's coming from the muses. The muses are inspiring the composer or the songwriter or the musician. But the same thing is happening for the painter. And so if we're interested in creativity, then you pay attention to really creative people, and they all are open to inspiration more than aspiration. And they're all open to what we would call the unseen, or what used to be, people used to call the other world, which is not AI. It's the other world of origins, of sources of energies and spiritual transcendence and all kinds of capacities. So the creative person is in tune with their own deep self and open to things that are way beyond themselves. And the artist is a channel for the art.
That's perfect. I also would like to take up on what you said about the muses because I believe there are a couple of aspects to creativity. In a very simple way, my studies reveal that there are actually two aspects to creativity. One is when we just get the idea, where and the idea always comes from outside because it's something you see, you make a connection, and it's like ideas come. And if you don't get up and do something, you'll find that very soon there will be somebody else in the world who'll get up and come up with exactly that same idea. So it's not really unique to you. Yes, the way you interpret it might be a little different, but ideas are out there. And so I think it's very interesting the way what Steve Jobs said. He said that ideas come a dime a dozen, but the hard thing is to manifest the idea. So that's where most people give up because an idea is easy. I mean, you could be relaxing on your couch and you could be laying down and suddenly, or you could be in the shower, which is when I come my best ideas. And suddenly there's this wonderful idea that strikes. But then, very soon, either it's forgotten or it seems too hard to kind of take it on. And or then sometimes we start and we are just able to go to a certain distance and then we abandon it. So the hardest thing is to kind of stay with the idea, to see it through all the highs and lows. And perhaps that's why we have these stories of the hero's journey. And who knows, perhaps that's why all these kinds of stories got created. But before we move to the second aspect of creativity, which is the process of the manifestation, I was wanting to stay with the idea of inspiration, which is where do these ideas come from? So perhaps if we could talk about muses, and if you could just sort of give us an idea that a little bit in depth about the muses and inspiration from there.
So the muses are feminine deities, usually connected to Greek mythology. You can find them in other mythologies as well, but they are known in the Western world. And there's originally there were three of them, and then it became elaborated to be seven of them. The story of them, or part of the story, is they live on the side of a mountain. They live in a cave on the side of a mountain, which gives you a sense about inspiration. In other words, caves are a big thing in ancient cultures. Again, if we go back to Greek mythology, we have Plato's cave, and we have all these ancient ideas of the cave. The cave is an opening into the center of the earth. And so the cave can be imagined as in the heart, as if we have a cave in our heart. And just as we could go into a cave and get some idea or some imagination coming from the earth, from the pulse of the earth, or maybe coming from the muses or hanging out in the cave, we can also go into our heart. In Sanskrit, the same word for cave is the word for heart. And so we can go into the cave of the heart, or what people also call the heart within the heart. And in there, not the heart as the organ, but the heart as the spiritual presence. In there, there are energies trying to awaken in us. And so an inspiration can come from deep inside a person, but it also, as you said, can come from anywhere outside a person. And so the idea of the muses is that one part of it is that they are sending us inspired ideas. The other part is they're trying to get our attention from inside our heart. They're both in both places, and they can be because they're muses. And so, but the muse is connected to the deep well of memory. Because the mother of the muses is Mnemosyne, the goddess from whom we get the word memory. In other words, the goddess of all memory, the source of all memories. And in the old understanding, memories are not simply something of the past. They're something connected to the past that are also present. So certain memories live in us. And if a person becomes creative, they will find more memories that are actually living in them. And you can dip into that well of memory and keep getting inspired from it. So the muses are a symbolic representation of the deep well of memory and the active capacity to derive inspiration from the outside world, from another person, from a sound made by a frog, from from a leaf falling from a tree. All of these things can be inspiring to the open, creative mind and heart.
And I believe there are nine muses who kind of stand for different qualities, different
Yes,
topics.
yes. Yeah, they're given different, like, there's the muse of poetry, there's the muse of history. Cleo was the muse of history. But it doesn't mean the facts written down and agreed upon. She's like the storyteller of history. And then the muse of storytelling is Calliopeia, which is also almost the name for an instrument. And so they go through the naming of them and all. But I think the root of it is what's important, that there is something sending us dreams. Everyone dreams. Not everyone remembers their dreams, but if you stop dreaming, you die. Science has concluded that. So dreams are coming from some other world, a dreamscape, a dreamland, a dream time. But also inspirations are coming. And so if we go back and tie the muses and creativity back to creation stories, the world is created out of darkness in all of the various stories about creativity. We now are in the dark times. In India, it would be called Kali Yuga, dark time. And we don't know how long we're in here, but we're here. And that's like being in the cave. And that's also like being in one's heart. And so we are actually in the place that can be the most inspired place if we would just accept that we are here in darkness and that we don't know what's going to happen next. And what happens next then could be a creative thing, and it could come through us, each one of us. Because the old idea is creativity is pouring into the world, and it can only get in through the hearts and minds of those people that are alive. And so if we want to create a better world, then we each could have agency and we each could contribute something if we just would catch the imagination or the inspiration and as you said, not let it go, not be afraid of it, not give in to the voice in the back that says you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, not do all those things, but just say, this is a gift, I'm sticking with it, and we'll see what happens. And then that's the beginning of actually becoming creative.
You know what you said will be comforting to so many because I had so many friends who just come and say things like, oh, I don't have a single creative bone in me. And I've always wondered because I think they associate that with music or the arts. And there's just so many misconceptions about this topic itself. But since you clarified that, but every human carries creative potential within them, and you also clarified with the word genius, which everyone loves, but we always think that it's reserved for some special person out there. If we never associate that word with ourselves, and I think that a lot of people are going to just appreciate this concept because probably somewhere within we feel that way. I mean, we all feel the most important person that we individually are, the most important person on the planet. Every human thinks that way. Yet, when we start using our thinking mind, we start to think lesser of ourselves and we start the comparisons uh, and that's where we start to lose ourselves, we start to lose the connect with ourselves.
Yeah, we stay with music. People know everyone loves music to some degree because music is the presence of the muses. It's the presence of the spirit. It's the presence of the soul and all kinds of energies. And it moves through people. You actually feel it through your body and your psyche and your mind and your heart. And so, and so then you have what do you call it? The Voice on TV. They have The Voice, which the competition who has the best voice. And that's a cool thing. It's a good thing. It's better than some of the other competitions. But it isn't the voice per se. You know, in other words, it isn't the perfect person with perfect pitch necessarily. It isn't the person who can read the music properly necessarily. It's the person whose voice is creating something that moves everybody in the moment. And that could be technically a good voice, but sometimes it's technically a strange voice, you know, because it's a voice trying to communicate something that otherwise wouldn't get said or wouldn't get expressed. And so each person has a unique voice. We've done a lot of work with at-risk youth, street kids, gang kids, homeless kids. And the way we work with them is finding their voice. Because until a person can find how they are intended to speak, which could be intended to sing also, they don't feel fully alive.
Yeah.
And each person technically has a different voice. You can recognize people by their voice. But in the deep meaning of voice, it means a connection to an inner capacity to express oneself with deep feeling, if necessary, with great emotion, but also with creative expression that changes the world around them. And if each person realized that, like the friend that says they don't have a creative bone, they're looking at the wrong part of their body. Don't look at your knees,
Absolutely.
look at
Absolutely.
your heart.
Yeah.
Or even look at your vocal box. Look at the places where creativity comes from. And by the way, it's not the brain. The brain's great, and everybody gets benefits from the knowledge about the brain.
Yeah.
But the brain doesn't do creative things; it does connective things.
Yes.
The heart is the place where people always imagined the creative energy comes from.
Yeah.
And so that it comes with mind, but also with feeling. It comes with power, but also emotions. It's connective and it's creative.
What she said actually is so profound because this is where most people kind of give up, including me. I mean, I used to think that if I wanted to get better at my music, I I used to think that I just needed to sing better. And today, after so many years of reflection, I feel it was never about more technique, more abilities. It's something fundamentally about what you want to say, how do you want to express, and it's exactly what you said about finding the voice. It's not just the singing voice, but the voice which wants to communicate something. And that is
Yeah.
something which exists in every human. But people think they need to be perfect. Since we're speaking from a music point of view, I've found that sometimes the best of the most polished voices or the ones which are highly trained, um, they don't necessarily have the power to effectively communicate. And I've seen certain singers who sing in a very simple style, in something in which it almost sounds like anyone could sing like them. And yet they're the biggest superstars because they were creative, because they didn't allow any voices and noises in the head to hold them back. They just responded to the sheer feeling, the euphoria of just wanting to be themselves, whatever they could be. And I think that's the most profound message, that we get lost in perfection and we keep reading that till the whole skill level is sorted, till we feel emotionally very comfortable with things, we won't move, we won't do things. I think it's the thing that holds people back is staying in a place of discomfort. So it's like not making peace with oneself and where they are at a particular time. And so we just keep putting off things. So uh, what she said is just, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be truly authentic.
Yes. Excuse me, the authentic is usually what's missing. In Spain, they have the idea of duende, and it means a spirit that comes from the center of the earth that enters the dancer or the player or the singer and erupts through them, gathering energy in the depths of their soul, and that comes out as a unique expression that changes the moment for everybody. And so it's more like being soulful rather than being perfect. The
Yes.
word perfect is a Latin word which means through the form. When it's perfect, it's over. It's done. It's, in a sense, dead. Perfection is never the aim. Authenticity and full expression, creative expression, that's a more meaningful aim for the individual, but also for everybody else.
Yes.
Because when a person finds their genius or their gift, the gifted nature, the only thing to do is give it.
Yeah.
And then a strange thing happens.
Yes.
When a person is giving from an authentic place, the more they give, the more they have of it. They don't lose it by giving it, they get more of it. It doesn't mean that they don't have to take breaks once in a while and be healthy. It just means that you're tapping into the channel of creativity in a greater way. And so that's becomes the job of the artist or the creative person. But initially, there's usually the struggle between other people's ideas of who we are and what's trying to come and awaken in us. And that's human, and that's been present throughout time. And I think it's because the individual is unique. That's the key, that the uniqueness is the source of the authenticity and the creativity. And so, like you say, you can have many singers, and it's wonderful to hear many singers. And yet, there's a person who comes along who maybe doesn't measure up to the best pitch singers and all that kind of stuff, and maybe isn't even practiced enough. And then something's coming through them, and everybody goes, "Whoa, that's it. That's it. That's the duende. That's the creativity in the present in a person who we don't expect it from." And so one of the things about artists is an artist is not supposed to measure themselves against other artists. That's a mistake. We measure ourselves against our own creations. Am I getting a little better at it? That's a meaningful measurement.
Yeah.
As soon as we're measuring ourselves to others, we have lost our unique position, and we are, in a sense, sacrificing our own creativity out of fear that others are better.
Yeah. And I think that it's so important to actually dare, because I've personally seen that sometimes maybe because I'm feeling nervous or I'm feeling just a little under the weather on some days, and I choose to at times not do things. Although actually my experience has been that when I'm not really expecting anything from that thing, in fact, on those days, my concerts have gone far better than the days when I felt, okay, I can kill this today. This is awesome. And then somehow it just went okay. It didn't really, there was nothing really fantastic about it. And then on some days when I felt that I'm not even sure I should try this today. And suddenly, somehow by just the act of surrendering and just getting into whatever I'm trying to do, whether it's writing, whether it's painting, whether it's music. Somehow, just that surrender at times takes me to the state of flow where I don't need to even know is something going right or wrong. If you're just in that, you become that, and it's afterwards you're just wondering how did this happen, and um, I think it's just having the trust also that we don't need to control things so much. We just need to be true, and we just need to just, I wonder, Michael, that is it something in personalities that some personalities have this component of daring, of not being afraid, as against
Well,
many of us?
confidence is something that comes and goes. The word means to confide in oneself, to be in a confidential inner relationship. That's what confidence comes from. And it comes and goes. Like I know that basketball players who have to shoot the ball into the air and hope it goes through a little circle, when they're confident, they can do it all the time. And then their confidence disappears. They're like professionals. They're as better than anyone at doing it. And when that confidence goes away, they can't make the shot. And so that means they have lost the confiding within themselves. They've lost the anchor. They've lost the deeper connection to their own gift or their own talent. But I love what you said about surrender, because that's the key. The person has to be strong enough. You have to have a strong enough ego or sense of oneself that I'm going to do it. I know it's scary. I may fail. I'm going to do it. You have to have that. But then you also have to say, now I'm surrendering, because what's going to happen is something coming through me. That's also what you mentioned afterwards. You think, what happened? I don't even know what happened.
Yeah.
That's the moment. It's not reproducing some other moment. It's how did the manifestation of creativity come through me in that moment, so that my voice not only change how I'm feeling and where I'm at, but it affected everyone.
Yeah.
And so I think surrender is a key, but you have to have enough ego to try and then enough humility to surrender.
Yeah.
And I've had the same experience on a time when I'm feeling like scattered or
Yeah.
not even, maybe I have a headache or I
Yeah.
remember one time, so I often tell stories while playing hand drums. So I'll be playing,
Right.
African hand drums while telling a story. And one time I went to an event, and people are there, how it is, and you have to give something. And I had a fever and I was feeling like dizzy a little bit and a fever. But when I sat down and started to play the drum, something changed. And then it was as if something, because I had the fever and didn't feel well, it was almost as if my ego forgot to show up. And all of a sudden, something was pouring through me. And when I tell stories, I'm not reciting. I never repeat the story the same way. It's being made up
In the
somehow
moment.
while I'm speaking it. And that night, it was clear that whatever came through was like an altered experience for everyone. And when it was over, the fever was gone. It was as if, and that leads to another idea about music in particular. The old idea is that music is the healing road, that one of the functions of music is to heal. And the word heal means to make whole. And so when someone plays or sings musically, the audience becomes whole. When everybody stands up genuinely, spontaneously to clap at the end, it's because they have become a whole living community in the moment because of the voice sometimes of one person. And it's not a proof that that person is the best person. It's really a proof that we all can be vehicles, and the meaningful creative vehicles are aimed at healing and wholeness. And so again, we go back to the condition of the world, which is polarized. Everyone turned against each other. No matter what the subject matter is, you throw it out there, it gets polarized. That's the modern world. Well, polarization and division literally means a lack of healing. And so what heals is not a new idea or a committee, something produced by a committee. What heals is whole creativity coming from individual human beings and from groups. And so creativity is what's needed to break the spell of polarization. And because creativity is always about the next thing being made, we cannot use the things that were used creatively before. Just the way all the love songs have to be rewritten every generation. There's already been a million love songs, but it has to be done again. We have to recreate the sense of human community as being a dynamic of creativity between the individual and the group. And when we start doing that, people will have inventions. They will have not artificial inventions, but authentic inventions and ideas and forms of music and art that are healing. And that's how we find the next world.
It sounds like, you're um, touching on the aspect of spirituality, that one
Mm.
core which can really help us to heal ourselves. Because I'm trying to think that what are the ideas? Because we keep hoping for a perfect world, a world in which people won't disturb us, people will be nice to us, our circumstances will be good, and that's when we'll really get creative. But we're never going to find that. And um, as you said, creativity will emerge from the dark. So, how does one navigate through the darkness? Do you think that spirituality, and I'm intentionally not bringing up the word religion because a lot of different people kind of interpret that differently, um, and somehow with religion, personally, I felt there is the positive, but then there's the negative as well. And for me, I found that that has created a lot of conflict within me. And so spirituality is a more simple way of just understanding life at a deeper level, how it moves. I don't need too much of the formal, practices that somebody else dictates, but things which I can sort of discover for myself. Although that's a topic that I will be coming to after this. So, what are your thoughts on spirituality or religion for that matter? Are they separate and how?
They're interconnected, but not necessarily so. So I think of this old idea of the way to the way. So it's the way with the little w to the way with the big W. So we have to get started somewhere. And that usually is local. In other words, wherever we are born, where that's where we're going to interact, we're going to have experiences. The books are going to come in certain forms. The practices, even the spiritual practices, will have certain forms. And so the initial inspiration of religions usually is very good. And so you start with the local form, and so you start in whether it's with Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or Sikhism or Taoism. It goes on because it has to be everywhere. And it doesn't mean that that's going to be the whole answer for you. That's the way. And then a person gets going, maybe just the way you might get going in art school, or you might get going by joining a band, and the band plays a certain kind of music, and that's the little W way. It gets stuff going. But then there's a bigger way where the person becomes. I just thought of Buddhism for a minute, and so Buddha wasn't the Buddha at the beginning. He was actually a prince trapped in a garden, held there by the convention of his family and the exaggeration of wealth and power that they had. And so he had to get out of that to get going on his way. And but the same is true for everyone. And so you get going somehow. You get going with the way that you find. And then I like the idea of a pathless path. You come to a place in the path where there's no footsteps. And so then there's two things going to happen. I'm going to be too afraid to go on, and I will join back with the group and just try to be a good member. Or I'm going to go, no, I want to go another step. And now you're stepping onto a path where there are no footprints to follow. And that's the path of creativity. And so the idea is then that individual path or that unique circumstance that we have to step through, work through, walk through will take us to the bigger way, the big W way. And then to make it all okay or, you know, whole, the further a person gets on the way, the more they're able to see how the other ways are similar. And the story behind the way to the way is that when a person goes all the way, then they find Buddha and Rama and Jesus and everyone else is all hanging out at the same place that turns out to be the center that all the ways we're trying to get to, but you can only get there by going your way.
Yes. Thank you for that. I also would like to discuss that when I say that, we don't have to follow everything, um, that either religion or our traditions bring to us. But there's still a lot of helpful, sort of rituals and practices that really help to strengthen us, to change our thinking. Like, I remember that I'm not a very ritualistic person, and even there are a lot of things. I'm a born Hindu, and I still don't follow most of the things that I said. Although actually Hinduism is a religion which is very open ended. You can go to the temple if you feel like. You don't have to go if you don't. And I mean, nothing is forced. It's where you pick and choose, and so it's good. It agrees with the way I think. Yet, I remember that there's one ritual which is done uh, generally for boys when they're 8 years old. I mean, it begins from 8 and then it can go through their entire teenage years, where it's considered like a transition, where they kind of do that ritual. It's where a priest kind of first, I mean, we call them something else, but a priest is called in and then he creates this ritual where there's fire and which is a havan, and they are given a mantra is chanted. and there's get threads. It's like it's called a thread ceremony, and it's showing a
Upavita.
where
Upavita.
yes, where you kind of where you
Yeah.
kind of transition, uh and I didn't really want to do anything else, but when my son turned 8, I instinctively felt that um that it should be done for him. I don't have much of logic to give to why I felt that, but I felt that there was some value to that. And I know that you've done work with this, and so if you could sort of explain a little bit of this and the value of that.
Yeah. Well, it's a good instinct on you, from you as a mother, realizing something else is needed. The parents cannot do the whole thing. And usually there needs to be this spiritual energy that comes in from somewhere. And some people will start it as early as 7 or 8. By the way, the genius first manifests usually between 8 and 11. And so I don't think it's a psychological accident on the part of people developing what I think is called upavita, which means the thread of life. And usually it's hung across from the right shoulder and it goes over the heart. And it says your heart and your body and your mind and your soul is tied in by the thread of your existence and your genius and your everything. You're tied into the web of life, to enter his great web. And you are a unique knot in the web of life. It was to give the young person the idea of, yes, you are part of your family and yes, you're part of your community, but you are a part of a spiritual, I don't know what you say, community of souls that goes on back behind us and on ahead of us as well. So that's a core ritual to give each young person, it's supposed to be girls and boys, get something that says you are threaded into the spirit. You are threaded into the web and the fabric of life, and you are a unique thread. And so I love that. We've done that with homeless kids. We give them the red thread. And so part of the explanation in symbolism, there's a green thread, which is the green thread of nature. And that green thread goes through all the plants and all the forests and all the flowers and everything and all the grains. They're all connected through the green thread of life. But when it comes to humans, it's about the heart and the red thread. And the red thread is also the thread of imagination. And so it's opening the heart. It falls over the heart because it's supposed to open the heart to the spiritual presence, but also to a greater imagination. And so imagination is required in order to recognize the gods and the goddesses or the one God or however many you like to have. Imagination is needed to recognize spirituality, and the two go together. And so I think that's a great instinct. And of course, in the Western world, it's mostly missing now. And even the rituals that are being used are often imitative. They're imitating something from the past, but they're not delivering the essence of spirit. Because, and I noticed that you said how the fire was started, because the old idea was, education is not the filling of a pail with water, but the lighting of a fire in the heart of each student. So they know what they're doing. Symbolically, they're saying, we're going to introduce you to the flame in your heart, which is the flame of love, yes, but also of imagination and creativity. And we're going to put this thread, and then you keep the thread to remember you are tied into a world that's greater than the obvious evident world, because everyone is really a citizen of two worlds. The daily world, where time marches on and everything is limited and so on. Everything can be accounted for. And the creative world, the imaginary world, the spiritual world, which is immeasurable. You cannot measure it. You cannot condense it. It is the source of life to begin with, and it's a source of life going on. And each young person was supposed to have that experience where they feel that awakening. And they feel that they are really connected to a bigger world. And then all they need, not all, but another thing they need is to know that they are a unique expression in this great web of life. And then you have the two things really that you need. the knowledge that you are here to have a bigger life, and the knowledge that your own unique soul will show you how to do it. And so you follow the rituals, whatever they might be, until you get to the point where you're actually creating yourself beyond the accepted way of seeing things. And so I love that red thread. We have literally given thousands of them to homeless kids and street kids who have no place and nobody, and they think no one wants them. And we recreate that ritual. By the way, every time we do it, we change it. We recreate it out of the aspects of the moment. And the words are different every time. And that's another thing to understand about ritual. In many cultures now, people think ritual has to be repeated exactly. That's not ritual. You could call it ceremony. Ritual is the making anew of the moment and the people in the moment. And so when it works, it's usually a renewal of life. And it's not just then for the 8-year-old. Everyone gets inspired because it's so beautiful and it's so real. And it reminds them, oh yeah, I am tied in too. And you get then community, and you get also spiritual energy.
I'm so glad that you pointed out the difference between ritual and ceremony because, in Indian traditions, at times they have so many rules for a lot of these different kind of prayers and ceremonies that they have. And my mother used to mention that she wouldn't do some of these things because she said, I'm just afraid. What if I make a mistake? And I instinctively, again, always felt that I don't think you need to be very accurate in terms of traditionally how things are done. The most important thing is to have your heart in the right place and then just instinctively do things because that's what a ritual is. Like we just said, that it just gets created. It combines with your intention, your genuineness, your seeking, and it takes a life of its own, which is what the purpose and the intent genuinely was of the ritual. It wasn't just to have perfection in following certain rules and to not really feel that. Um, so I'm so glad that you said that because it really frees us to to do it our way, to do it the way which we're able to. With I mean, we all have different circumstances, and the important thing is still to do it.
So in a way, ritual is an art form, not a prescribed form. Now, certain things are required. You have to have an understanding of the symbols. You can't do the thread ceremony without red thread.
Without the threat.
Uh, you have to know how to make a fire, and you might want to know the rough order of things. But I'm glad to mention the idea of someone afraid to make a mistake. So that's back to perfectionism. And so the way I think about it is, first of all, when I was first learning hand drumming, the teacher said every mistake is a new style. And the problem with most people is they don't stick with this mistake long enough to find the style that was trying to come through them. So that's helpful. But in ritual, it's not a matter of right and wrong. It's right and left. If you go the wrong way, you fix it by going back the other way. You can fix mistakes in a ritual because it's right and left, not right and wrong. And so we need rituals. We do, because rituals are the core art form. Most of what we call art was formerly ritual. The sculptures were made for the outside of the temple. The paintings were made to hang inside the sanctuary. And music has always been a spiritual form. And so it all is trying to be creative all the time. And there's always a tendency to fix it or fixate it and say, this is the only way. And as soon as that happens, the muses go, let's go somewhere else. The spiritual entities go, it's too hard to get in there. Let's not go. And the next thing, you have a temple that doesn't have spirit in it, doesn't have soul in it. And people come out of it feeling less creative. But now, since we're in the dark times and the institutions are collapsing, not working very well, it becomes obvious that we have to reinvent ritual, just the way we have to keep reinventing art, the way we have to keep reinventing music, and so on. And we are in that time when I think there's more permission to be creative with ritual rather than to be imitative or repetitive. Authentic and spontaneous count for a lot.
Michael, I think you're someone with whom I could just keep talking all day. And one thought, one concept would just lead so naturally into the next.
Mm.
But since there's a time restriction before we leave, I would like you to talk a little bit about the work you do, about the foundation, where people can find you, connect with you. I know you offer a lot of very interesting courses.
Yeah. We call it Mosaic Multicultural Foundation. And the idea is it began with bringing people together that didn't usually come together because of ethnicity or because of belief systems or whatever. And trying to find what is it that allows us to come together creatively. That was the beginning. And in doing that, we were doing it mostly with adults of different races, really. And then what happened was really surprising was as soon as people got a sense of, oh, we can come together, they started to say, what about our young people? Can we bring our young people? Right away, people wanted to bring youth, young guys and young girls who are trying to find themselves and don't have the rituals or the ceremonies and are also being fed the inauthentic all the time. And so we quickly switched or added working with young people. So then for decades, we've worked with young people in trouble. And we called that Voices of Youth, trying to help the youth find their voices, especially the ones that were left out, kicked out, left behind, or rejected, because often they have something everyone else needs. And also, when they begin to find themselves, they have a lot of courage because they've already been in the dark and they're more ready to find ways to be bright. And so that's the history of it. And the method has always been stories. I tell folk tales, I tell fairy tales sometimes, I tell folk myths, and I tell myths, and inviting everybody into stories. So it's all about story and helping people find the essence of their own story and trust that they are here for a reason, here to do something meaningful. And yes, it's a struggle, and there are challenges, but the only way to be satisfied is to become oneself. So that's the overall project. And then when COVID happened, um, we had to stop doing things directly with people, which we have been doing for 35, 40 years. And we started doing it online. So now there's a lot of material online. We have free events online. We have workshops and other kinds of things. And then we also have books and we have recordings, and all of it is at mosaicvoices.org. That's our signature, mosaicvoices.org, lowercase. And so when people come, they'll find stories and they'll find videos and all that. And much of it is free. We have a podcast called Living Myth that goes out once a week, and it's free. It goes all over the world. You can support it. So people donate and people support us in those ways. But we want to do certain things for free because in order to remain creative, you have to give what you have. And of course, you have to try and make a living and all that. But it seems essential on two levels to give it away. One is so that we don't over-identify with it and turn it into a commodity, but keep giving it. But also so that anyone, regardless of their background or their economic condition or social status, any age, any person can come in and hopefully find something. And so we call that mosaicvoices.org.
Thank you so much, Michael. Today's conversation has been a true pleasure. And, I resonate completely with your work, with your ideas. And I think I really shared a topic which is the closest to my heart. You're the first person I've spoken with so many people, and we've explored so many different things. But to have a conversation purely on the topic of creativity was truly a pleasure. Thank you so much for
Well,
coming to the Creativity Dialogues.
thank you. A pleasure for me as well. Great to be with you, Chandana, and great good luck with your creativity project.